It's been said that better questions lead us naturally to better answers, and that it's in not knowing that we open the doorway to knowing. I'm Scott Lennox, and you're listening to The Beautiful Question, a consideration of things that truly matter in a complex world. My first memory of hearing the word acceptance was in the wake of a profound personal tragedy. I was 11. At the time, I completely misunderstood the meaning of the word and why the person speaking to me was using it. Now, 60 years later, I welcome the truth of what acceptance actually means. Join me this week as we consider the real meaning of acceptance and how to choose it and set it into motion in ways that make our lives better and more manageable. When have avoidance or denial or turning a blind eye to what's happening ever produced anything useful in our lives? In most cases, the answer has to be never. Yet when faced with challenges or difficult choices or things that are almost impossible to understand, it can seem easier to look away and push back from what we know to be inevitable. That's where the stance of acceptance comes in. If we're going to thrive and do as well as we can, regardless of our circumstances, it's important that we get our hands on whatever it is we're dealing with. We have to choose to be with it instead of fighting it. In times like that, one of the most important decisions we can make is to radically and fundamentally accept what we know to be true, without turning away from it, without trying to pretend that it isn't what it is. If we're really going to accept something, we do so without judging it, without pushing or pulling against it, and without stressing ourselves out in the process. In fact, real acceptance involves removing the pressure or the inner and sometimes outer force we've been using to try and make things into what they aren't. That becomes much easier to accomplish when we remember that acceptance has nothing to do with approval. That's the mistake I made when I was 11. It isn't about approval. It's not about declaring something to be good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant. It isn't about saying that we like it or hate it. It's not about repeatedly telling ourselves that something is impossible. In fact, it's not about judgment at all. Quite the opposite. Acceptance is an active process of recognition through which we consciously remove judgment. In that way, we open ourselves to the understanding that what is taking place is exactly as it is, that it is real, that it won't go away regardless of how hard we try to avoid it, and that it's actually happening right here and right now. One of my favorite definitions of acceptance is one I borrowed so long ago, I can't say with certainty where or from whom I first heard it, though I've recently heard it quoted by both Jon Kabat-Zinn and Tara Brach. Acceptance, an engaged willingness to be with what is. An engaged willingness to be with what is. When we let that sink in for a minute, we see that acceptance is a form of being radically present, or as Eckhart Tolle has referred to it, we are working with instead of working against what is happening. In my own life and in my own practice, I think of acceptance as an intentional act of personal focus that reveals and demonstrates itself as one of the healthy expressions of our inner resolve and our personal strength. When we engage in it, we naturally act in our own best interest, as well as the best possible interest of those around us, regardless of how they might interpret what we're doing. So how do we go about putting acceptance into place and keeping it there? When I was first learning how to fly, I flew by what are called visual flight rules. I looked at maps and at the world around me through the windshield and the side windows of the airplane while I was aloft. In order to go beyond that, and to learn to fly using only the onboard instruments, not relying on the ability to look around and visually take in what's happening outside the cockpit. Pilots have to make a fundamental shift in thinking and perception. That shift starts with the decision to trust that the airplane's instruments are accurate, and then fly according to what they're telling you. You have to learn to trust the plane's turn and bank indicator, an altimeter, and airspeed indicator, instead of looking for outside references. It takes practice, and it takes time, and it can feel quite disorienting at first. But before too long, it becomes as easy and natural as flying by sight. Choosing acceptance and staying with that choice most often happen in the same way. We make the decision to embrace what's happening exactly as it is, and then keep embracing the fact of it until acceptance becomes easier and easier to do, even when what we're accepting is difficult or painful. Before long, just like a pilot learns to trust the aircraft's instruments, our acceptance of what is happening begins to feel natural and right. As that takes place, the pull of the former inner tension and confusion and struggle all fade away. When I went through a major health crisis years ago, nothing in my conscious mind wanted to accept the truth of what was happening. Unconsciously, I was trying to convince myself that if I accepted the diagnosis as true, something horrible would surely happen. As you can guess, the truth was exactly the opposite. It was only when I rationally and compassionately accepted what I was experiencing that I could take the realistic steps I needed to bring about my eventual healing and recovery. In my work as a counselor, I've seen the same thing play out in other people over and over again. The more quickly someone can come to the place of real acceptance, the more quickly and the more deeply they're able to take better care of themselves, and the more naturally they flow with the movement of their lives. So, far from giving in or giving up, acceptance is a dynamic and lively state. It's a state of engagement. When acceptance becomes our chosen stance, we can take heart, being encouraged from within ourselves as we recognize that we're in the intentional process of acting in ways that serve our highest good. We can take heart knowing that from somewhere deep within ourselves, we're marshaling countless inner resources. Before long, we're able to see our successes and own them. And the more we trust those deeper resources, the more we take heart, knowing more and more that our inner instruments are always telling us the truth. Then, as one of life's accomplished pilots, if you will, we can laugh and play as we take to the sky and dance with the clouds. This week, to inspire your consideration of acceptance and to make that process easier, not harder, I offer the following 6 beautiful questions. 1. What ideas are preventing you from accepting your life or your most current challenge as it really is? 2. What more effective ideas would help replace the ineffective ones and help you cope in better ways? Question 3. As you remain steadfast with your new ideas, seeing your life more clearly and embracing it as it is, what things will naturally transform and in what ways? 4. What needs your acceptance next, and what do you choose to do about it? Number 5. Are there blessings and positive things that you've been denying in some ways? Good things about yourself that you haven't been accepting? And last of all, question 6. What will happen when you consciously face the good in you, the blessings and the positive things in your life, with full acceptance? As you keep choosing acceptance, I'd love to hear about the positive changes that are taking place in your life. Write and tell me about them. As I say each week, my light with your light. Thank you again for listening. I'm continually inspired by our collaboration as we work and play together, building better lives and better possibilities for ourselves, for one another, for the world, and for our beautiful planet home. I look forward to your comments and to your feedback. You can also be inspired by visiting my good friends at Cosmos Journal. That's KOSMOS Journal. Their mission is to inform, inspire, and engage global transformation in harmony with all life. You can easily find them online at cosmosjournal.org. And as always, you can find my free podcasts and guided relaxation audios by searching for The Beautiful Question in Apple Podcasts, in SoundCloud or CastBox, or by visiting the podcast page of my website at scottlennox.com. If you find them useful or encouraging, don't hesitate to share them. I'm Scott Lennox, and this has been The Beautiful Question. The Beautiful Question is a One Light production, written, recorded, produced, and funded by Scott Lennox at Heart Rock Studios in Fort Worth, Texas, as a way of paying forward to life, being fully present, and becoming better engaged with things that truly matter in a complex world.